Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be recreating this beautiful Ankara top. If this is something you're interested in, then keep watching. So I have 2 yards of Ankara fabric here and I folded it into two. That's 1 yard each, and I'm confirming my measurement here. So I'm going to be taking that corner right there, that's the folded part, and I'm going to be placing it, making it into a triangle to form my half circle. By the way, we're going to be cutting a half circle to make this top. So my bust divided by 4 is 10 inches plus half-inch seam allowance. So I'm going to be figuring out where I would get 10.5 inch on a straight line on my folded fabric, and that's what I'm marking right there, 10.5 inch. So this line will be my chest line, and I'm going to be making a straight line right there. So my armhole depth is 9 inches. I'm going to be placing 9 inches on that line. Then I'm going to be coming up by how low I want my top to be. So I'm going to be marking 5 inches. That means I'm coming down by 5 inches. You know, this top doesn't have a shoulder, it's kind of off shoulder. So I'm coming up by half inches. Then my armhole depth is 9 inches, and on that 5 inches line I'm going to be marking my strap to strap measurement, which I used 9 inches divided by 2, that's 4.5 inches. Then on my chest line I'm going to be marking my 10 inches, which is quarter of my bust measurement, plus my half-inch seam allowance, and that is what I'm marking right there. So I'm going to be connecting my strap to my bust measurement, quarter of my bust measurement, to form my armhole curve right there. So for my, I came in by about a half inch on that point before marking my neck depth. You can decide how low you want your neck depth to be. I think I first did 1 inch, then I later came down and I did 1.5 inch for my neck depth, and you would see how low it is when I open up my fabric. So that's me just trying to remark my neck depth and connect it back to my neckline. So from here now I'm going to be figuring out the length of my top. I want the full complete length with my seam allowance to be 25 inches. I don't want it to be too long. So I'm going to be placing my tape on my chest line, that 9 inches point, and I'm going to be marking 25 inches at that folded edge there. But in order to get the length of my top to be a perfect circle, I'm going to be checking what I have from the top to my 25 inches length, and what I have there is 31 inches. So I'm just going to be taking my length measurement right from that top so that it will be accurate. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So that's just me rotating my tape in order to get 31 inches. This is just for my length to be accurate. Actually, you can actually take your length from wherever, but this is just so I get a very accurate measurement. So I'm just connecting the points that I marked together, and then that's about it for the drafting of this top. So I'll be connecting that side part together as well, and then the next thing to do now is to cut it out. So I'm going to be opening up my front, and I'm going to be checking what I have on my neckline. I have 10 inches. So for the gathers at the front neckline, I'm going to be multiplying 10 inches by 3, which is 30 inches, and I'm going to be cutting out a length of 5 inches for that gathers on the neckline of the front. So this is about 15 inches on fold. Then I'm going to be marking 5 inches. So I want to use the same fabric to finish my armhole. So I'm going to be cutting bias strips from this Ankara fabric. So you see the way I folded it. In order to confirm that you're cutting on bias, you will notice that when it has a stretch, when you try to stretch it, normally Ankara does not have stretch, but when you fold on bias, it has a stretch. So you're going to be folding at an angle to form like a kind of triangle, if you get what I mean. So from this folded point, I'm going to be marking 1.5 inch, which is what I'll be using for my bias strip. So I'm just connecting the lines. Then I went ahead to divide the strip into two. You remember it's on fold, that part is on fold, in order to get my 1.5 inch bias strip. Now this is the 30 inches by 5 inches that I'll be using for my gathers. I already hemmed one side of it and I ran gather stitches on the other side of it. So in order to do your gathers with your sewing machine, just set your sewing machine to the longest stitch. For mine it is 5. I set it to 5. So without back stitching, I just ran a straight stitch on the top there. So I'll be picking one of the thread and I'll just be pulling it gently, just like this, in order to form my gathers. And I'll try and gather it to 10 inches. I already notched the center, remember, so I'm just trying to check my measurement to see if I have 10 inches. I have more than 10 inches, so I'm going to be gathering it more until I have 10 inches. So now I'm going to be placing it on the front part. This gathers is just for the front part of my top alone, so I'm just going to be placing it right there, matching center to center, like the center of my top and the gathers together, making sure they match. And I'm going to be pinning them down, and I'm going to be running a stitch down just to secure it. And this is what I have. So the next thing to do is to join my front side and my back together. I'm going to be doing it using 1/2 inch seam allowance that I left, and I also make sure I overlocked it so that everything is clean inside. Then the next thing to do is to bring in my bias strip. I already folded my bias strip into two, just like the regular cotton bias that you buy in the market. That is how I folded it. I folded it into two at first, and I folded again to form this. So what I'll be doing is I'll be tucking in my armhole fabric. I'll be tucking it into the middle of my bias strip. So I'll make sure it's right there in the middle, and I'm going to be sewing very close to the edge of my bias strip. After I'm done with both armhole, I cut strips for my sleeves. I cut 3 inches, and then I joined by 1/2 inch on both sides, and I folded it and make sure that my joining is at the back. So that's what I'm going to be using for this strap for this top. It's going to be very long, and I will be able to tie it anyhow I want. So at the end of the day, the strap is 1 inch, so I'm going to be placing it at this very edge of my neckline. You can see I'll make sure I place it at the very edge so that when you flip it back up, it is matching up with my the edge of my armhole, if you get what I'm trying to say. So next I'm going to, you can use your cotton bias, or you can decide to use the same Ankara bias right here, but you're not going to be tucking it in like we did for the armhole. For the neckline, you're going to be folding that edge part here so it's not rough. Then you're going to be sewing it on the front part first, then you're going to be flipping it over and turning it to the back part, just the way you would turn with your regular cotton bias. So I'm just trying to trim out the excess that I have here on my neckline. So remember to fold the edge of your bias before you start sewing. So I'm going to be folding the edge right there, and I'm going to be sewing on the front part first, then I'll be flipping the bias and turning it to the back part. After finishing my neckline, this is what I have. I also made sure that I tucked in the ends of my strap and I just stitched on it so that everything is clean. The next thing to do is to use a regular cotton bias of matching color to finish up the hem of my top. And after everything, this is what we have. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, you can drop it for me in the comment section. See you next time. Bye bye.